Hey, all right, we're live. What's up, my boys? I'm Cody Austin here with some population policies. I'll talk a little more on that in a second. I'm going to give the one person who's registered like a minute to show up if they're going to. I don't have super high hopes. Probably this can be a VOD stream. You know what? That's all right. I'm going to deal with the VOD stream. I'm going to wait till that says 4:01 because my clock is behind, I think. Yeah, my clock is behind. When that says 4:01, we're just going to start rolling. You're not showing up yet. I doubt anyone else is going to show up if they haven't registered yet. It's probably just going to be, me and you. How you doing? Hope you're having a good night. Good morning. All right, it says 4:01. No one's shown up. All right, what's up? It's me. How's my webcam looking real quick? All right. The webcam looks fine. I don't reach the top of it. That's nice. I'm Cody Austin here with some population policies, AP Human Geography. I took this my freshman year just last year. I got a 5 on the exam, and Fiveable was like, hey, yo, what's up? You want to stream this? And obviously I said, yeah, I do. So now I'm here. I'm here with you. And we're going to have a good time talking about population policies. Before we get into that, though, there's something we need to talk about. There's a very important message I need to send to you, and that's to follow Think Fiveable on their social media accounts. They've got a Twitter, they've got an Instagram, they've got a YouTube. It is at Think Fiveable on all of them. You want to watch some Fiveable YouTube? Think Fiveable on YouTube. What's that? What's this I hear? There's a Fiveable Twitter, but what could it be? Oh, I know. It's Think Fiveable on Twitter. Their tag is at Think Fiveable. Go follow them. They got all the stuff you need to know about Fiveable. They got all the nice resources for your AP class. If you're stuck on human geography, if you're stuck on where you want to go next, they follow all the cool people, all the cool teachers. They have your stuff. If you want it, they've got it. And that's all you really need. All right. Next, what we're doing in the stream. What's pumping? Obviously, we're doing population policies, but what does this entail? What's going to happen? What's going down? Right? So we're going to start off with just some quick pre-stream knowledge assessment. Practice questions. Practice questions are always good. There's never a situation where a practice question is going to hurt you. And if you don't want to do it, you just skip ahead like 30 seconds. So it's probably not going to be there anymore. It really is just that easy to get through that. And after our little knowledge assessment, we're going to move on to population growth. This is very important, understanding population policies, obviously. What are the policies on? We're not going to understand that if we don't understand population. So to do that, we're going to look at 2 ways population is modeled, and we're going to discuss what it means. We're going to look at population pyramids. They're quite popular. We're going to look at the demographic transition model. I looked at an entire stream on this before. Go check it out if you still have trouble after this, because it was a pretty content-heavy stream. There was a lot of stuff there. We discussed it. If you don't know anything about demographic transition model, go watch that. It was a great time. After that, we're going to start getting into policies. We're going to get into expansion policies, pro-natal policies. They like the natal. We're going to get into restrictive policies, reductive policies, anti-natal policies. That's the polar opposite of it. We're going to talk about what that means. We're going to get into eugenic policies. They're like their own thing. They don't actually affect much, but they affect the makeup, demographic makeup of an area. And that's pretty not that cool, actually. They're kind of sucky. We're going to do some more practice questions. Practice questions are great. They fill up time on the stream. They give you something to do. It's a win-win-win-win-win situation. I get to know what I did right, what I need to go back on. Oh, I just punched the table. I need to go back on to help my audience. I obviously can't do that right now. You need to know what you might need to look back on, or what you might need to find another source on if I just sucked a lot. Overall, you get to practice some. Practicing is always nice. It's always a good idea to practice. Then we're going to do a Q&A, which is going to be very, very simple. I'm going to say there's no one to ask questions, and I'm going to turn the stream off. Moving into our stream then. Pre-stream knowledge, as we've just said. We're going to do some questions. The first question, what are some examples of eugenic policies being used? Now I'm going to give you just a second here to pause the VOD, to do some big old thinking. So this time right here, this is what you're going to want to use to pause the video. You can do that right now. And now that you've done it, you've done yourself some thinking, you've got your mind jogging. Your little brain factory has been up to some real serious work. You've probably come up with an answer or two. And I would love to know what those answers are, but unfortunately, I'm just a man in your screen. See, we can't get that much conversation going. I really hope you got something good. I'm going to give you just the textbook answer, the big one. The biggest example of eugenic policies being used that you'll ever really see is this kind of weird state known as Nazi Germany. Aryan race, but Aryan race, no one was Aryan race there. They kind of made that up. They used the word for it wasn't applied. If you weren't really German, then you weren't allowed to have kids, and you were probably dead. It's a pretty big example. You all saw this in mid 1950s. No, not mid. Early 1900s. Why did I say mid 1950s? Early 1900s, America. You saw this. It was kind of proposed by Thomas Malthus after he had webbed feet. It's something that comes up through history, but it was never really big. Nothing ever truly happened. You never saw a big demographic change until the Nazis decided to try it out. And I guess it was successful until they all died. Whoops. Second question, we got 3 here. What regions of Earth are likely to have expansive or pro-natal policies? You might not know what that means. If you don't, probably just skip ahead of this question. Maybe the next question is quite similar. But for those of you who do know and want to take a crack at it, this is where you would pause the video. Wow, that was some real constructive time there. I'm glad you had that minute to pause. You really got to think. Now that you've had that minute to think, your answer, it's probably there. It's probably in your head. Is it correct, though? That's what we're here to decide. We're here to see if your answer is right, if it stands up to the test of the test, right? So the real answer we're looking here, the regions that are going to want to have these expansive pro-natal policies, they're going to be very developed, right? And what's very developed and doesn't have 1 million people already and is freaking out because their population won't stop growing? We're looking at Europe, we're looking at Scandinavia, all that crazy stuff where their population is trying to just die. The population is, and they want to stop that. We're looking at North America to an extent. I'm not 100% on the situation of Canada. I imagine they're in a similar situation in the United States. But in the United States, we're starting to have the issue crop up if we're going into stage 5 of DTM. And it's becoming a bit of an issue. Are we going to start making it nice to have kids? Are you going to want to be able to, child grow population? Wow. Especially with a lot of the immigration debate going on, there's a lot of resistance to just taking in a bunch of foreign people instead of having kids. So it's starting to become a big issue in North America, and it already is, a big thing in Europe. You see Germany doing it. You see Scandinavia wanting to do it. Italy's probably getting in on it. I'm not 100% on that. Hungary's definitely pretty big on it. Hungary's massive on this one. Moving on. Oh, I was wrong. I thought I had a different question. What a surprise. How does the population of a country change to develop? This is a bit of a lengthy one. This is going to be a bit more of an in-depth answer. So you're going to need some time to think of such an in-depth answer. So you're going to want to pause the video right here. And now that you've unpaused the video, of course, because you can hear me talking again, that means you've come up with your quite lengthy answer. So population of a country as it develops. When your country is very undeveloped, you're going to see a lot of people not get old because they're dead, and a lot of people be born and then die really fast. There's going to be an incredibly high birth rate, just abnormally, extremely, inhumanly high. And then as it develops, you'll start to see the birth rate inevitably drop. In every single case we've seen, as a country develops, its birth rates decline and its average population age goes up. Not just like they make it to the, 80s and it stops. It just kind of keeps going because technology keeps getting better. And they're like, LOL, want to live to 110? And someone's like, yeah, I do. And then they go out and do it. They just live to 110 because that's what's on the agenda. Oh, I better check my plans. No, I can't go to dinner with you. I have to live. And then they live. And that's real crazy. That's kind of wacky. So as a country develops, you'll see its population go from really spread out with, I guess spread out works, a whole bunch of kids. If we have a line of kids, it's really there. And then people die really fast, and you stop at like 30. And then it develops. You see the kids get reined in, and everyone doesn't die. So you see, it's more of a rectangle, maybe a little bit of a triangle. It chills out. The population kind of stops changing as you go up the ages. And then if it really starts going, you'll see an upside down triangle where you have a baby boom at some point, and the baby boom, which is this nice little bulge here, moves up, and everything after it goes down, and suddenly your population there's like no kids here, and every time you go up in age group, it gets more. And that's awful for a country. We'll probably discuss that here. Population growth. We're not going to have to go back and discuss anything because there's no one to ask if I need to go back and discuss anything, unfortunately. It's just me and you guys. No one. Me and the boys, I'm the boys. That's who I'm talking to here. So moving on to population growth, we're going to be looking at the demographic transition model. This shows how a population is going to change as you develop. That's the entire point of this model. Unlike the population periods we're going to look at, they reflect it, but the point of them isn't to show it. They just happen to because it happens. And this explains why it happens. So when you're looking at stage 1, you got that nice line right there. It splits it straight. Can you see my mouse? You can probably see my mouse. It's right here. There's a line. It's stage 1 is here. This one. You'll see people die just a lot, an incredible amount. They won't stop dying, and that's not very cool. But you also see that they won't stop having children. Every person just gives a lot of kids. They have just a lot of children, and all of them die except that one guy. A massive amount of children. And it continues. You'll have a bunch of people with no real access to technology. The important thing here is they are not developed at all. They're hunter-gatherers. They're living in the woods. They're like throwing some spears at some pigs, and they're eating it. And they're grabbing some berries, and they're eating it. And that's the technology they got. They got some tents, too. Wow. Really pales in comparison to the technology we have, of course, because they don't have any. So everyone gets sick and dies, and also has 48,000 kids, and about 3 of them live. That's what we're looking at here. And then you start to see development actually take place. They've settled down and started farming, and they're obviously not running around without a house and dying of disease. They started building an economy for their group of people that they associate with, they live with, and they started moving up in technology as opposed to I found a way to make my spear sharper. I found a way to grow more crops. I found a way to not suffer from terrible inflation because you have those developing problems as opposed to something more akin to the caribou have left and I cannot eat. And once you get here, once you start developing, you'll have this crazy thing where you discover how to make people stop dying. What's that? You have the cold? Oh, don't cry, Jonathan, because now you don't. As opposed to 4 years ago, oh, what's that? You have the cold? It's been really nice knowing you, man. I really enjoyed the time we spent together, but you're dead now. There's no way to save you. You've died. But now here, that's not a problem. If John is the cold, you give him some medicine and he's all right. If Elizabeth has no food, the caribou are gone. What are you going to do? What are you going to eat? You go to your farm and you pick up some wheat and you just throw it at her. You say, I have food. And she probably doesn't eat the wheat because that's not edible. You turn it into bread. But you see this just exploded in population because people aren't dying, but people are still having millions of kids per person. They won't stop being born. And that's what you see here with this natural increase. The greater the gap between this line and this line is, the higher the population is growing. And you see that reflected in this line right here, population. As you start developing, people don't realize there's no social pressure, there's no economic pressure to not have kids. So they keep having just an incredible amount of kids. And the population, it does epic nene moment. It rises just incredibly high, incredibly fast. It's unprecedented. You won't see this in any other stage. You won't see this really in any other circumstance other than this stage right here. It just happens very, very fast. And then you move on to the next one. People start to get used to this new development. The economy starts to really settle in, make itself at home, as opposed to the very rudimentary stuff you'd have before some, I guess, resources to sell, and you're growing livestock and plants to sell. You're not making anything. Once you get here, you start to make goods, you start to get the factories going, you have an economy that's not going away. He's there to stay. And once you get here, there's economic pressure to not have kids, because a kid isn't someone to help you on the farm. A kid is something you have to pay for, to educate and to feed, and it's generally a burden. And it might get you out of a job, and then you're in just a real deep hole. So people stop having kids so much because there's pressure to not have kids, and there's a little bit of social pressure that starts developing. And you'll probably start to see women's rights happening, which means, yeah, you can't just make me have 400 kids because I don't want to. So birth rate goes away. Population is still growing. Natural increase is still definitely there. It's still happening. It's still quite big because it might be dropping fast, but it's dropped very far. So the population is still growing quite quickly, but pales in comparison to stage 2, of course. And the death rate, you will see, continues to drop because development is still definitely happening. The death rate's dropping pretty fast here because here you start to see medicine become very, I guess, available to everyone. You don't have to be very wealthy even to get medicine. This is where you start to just be a functioning society where everyone can, just go out and decide that they don't want to die of malaria, which is quite nice. Stage 4, once you're there, your birth rate is quite low. It's very close to matching up with this once you really settle into it right here. They're just about the same. So your population growth is going to slow. At the very best, like this is not very fast. You're looking at late stage 1, honestly. Either you're going to have very slow population growth or no population growth, because the economy is like life now. People start really devoting themselves to their careers as opposed to a family, which in the beginning, in stage 1, you could only devote yourself to a family. So once careers open up and they become essential to live, people start devoting themselves to that a lot because earlier a family was required to live. And having a kid is really, really damaging to your economic prospects because it's hard to pay for a kid. It's hard to take care of a kid if you don't have leave to take care of a kid. You're not getting your sleep. You're performing worse at your job. You're putting yourself on the line to have a kid. Once you move into stage 5, this is just, we don't know if stage 5 is a thing. We see a couple of countries that might be going into it, but we aren't 100%. It's just maybe starting to rear its head. But if stage 5 is a thing, then that will be where birth rates just kind of stop. They go below the rate of death. More people are dying than are being born, which means that the population starts to shrink. This obviously has awful effects on the economy because it means that if you're not producing enough workers to fill all of what needs to be filled for the economy, then you have to keep workers around who are like 65. So the age of retirement has to go up. And if you have like an American system where once you reach 18, you start to pay the people who are retired to live. John is retired because he's 70 and he has to have money to live. So the workers pay money for all of the seniors, including John, to live, right? They're basically paying his rent, but collectively, because there should be a lot more workers than retired people. So everyone should only have to pay a very small amount. Once they're, whoa. Is the stream still working? The stream's still working. Thank you, computer. Very cool. Once you have more people who should be retired than workers, everyone's have to pay like enough to keep 8 people alive on one job, and that just doesn't work. And if you try to keep it with that raising retirement age, then you're going to have terrible inflation because you're printing out all this money trying to give the working class enough to pay for the old people. So the old people are going to have to stay around longer to pay for people above them so you have enough money around to get them. That's obviously not very good. And then you're going to start to see people being bad at work. Your economy is going to become a lot less competitive because everyone's like in their late 50s and is slowing down, and suddenly you don't have people who are good at their jobs. And moreover, your population is getting smaller. That's kind of a time bomb before you don't have enough people to even sustain your development. You got to roll back some. Moving on. It's population pyramid. This is what we're going to see in stage 1. I had some points here. No, I didn't have points here. This is stage 1. This is Africa in 2000. I was told it's stage 1. I would take that with a pinch of salt because I don't 100% believe, at least to show some remnants of stage 1. But what you're going to see here is obviously very wide bases of children, and then it goes away very fast. And what you're going to look for to identify if something is in the range of stage 1 is you're going to look for a curve in the triangle. If it's a straight triangle like that, then you're going to see some more development there. But if it's something like this where there's just an incredible amount of children and they die very fast and it forms a curve, then you're looking at a stage 1, obviously. And once you get to stage 2, I had to find a completely different thing for this because this was off the countries and didn't have stage 2 on it, apparently. You're going to start to see the stabilization of a shape. Children, these people are probably either committing infanticide, which is not very cool, or they, no, because that's very young. They're probably committing infanticide, and that's not very cool, or very lucky. I say lucky. Luck not in the sense that it's good, because it's probably very detrimental to have a lot more males than females. Luck is in the case that that's kind of weird and you wouldn't expect it if they're not committing infanticide. But yeah, you see the stabilization of this shape. You see the amount of children, which would be like out here, start to get reined in. People aren't having a crazy amount of children. The children aren't dying very much. Obviously, this was probably around this, and maybe a little bit died. Or maybe they just didn't have quite as many, and it keeps going down. As a couple people die every bit of the way, obviously, because you're going to have some deaths everywhere. But it's not like the previous one where you've a lot of children, and then a lot of them die, then a lot of them, and it keeps going. Here, like a reasonable amount of them that you would expect for a country that's trying to do something dies. And then you move on to stage 3, and you start to see not just the stabilization of a triangle, but the stabilization of what looks like either a staircase or a rectangle. And the reason for this is once medicine starts becoming very out there, people don't die very often until they get to be very old. Because if, like, influenza or the plague isn't going to kill you, then what's going to kill you is a degenerative disease, a disease that's very hard to stop, but it also can't really do anything to you until you get old. Cancerous cells develop all the time in the body, but the body just gets rid of them. And it takes a very long time, because it's a game of chance every time, until you roll the dice wrong and one starts running away and it kills an old person because they've rolled the dice that many times. Heart disease, your heart has to run for a very long time until it gets that worn out. So if people aren't dying in here, then they're going to keep going up, and you're going to start to see this move up as these people who are already in worse conditions from being from the previous one. Every time you move up, you're going to see remnants in the period of the last stage. You people are going to stay relatively all right until they get to here, and they're going to plonk. You can also see this, just to make sure you don't get mistaken, if you're taking in a lot of migrants to do work, you can also see like either a bulge or a wall form that doesn't look like it should be there, and you might think it's because of, how a country's developing. It could just be because of migrants. Like, say, it should be doing that, well, that and then that, but these guys are all here to work on something, to build a new crazy stadium, because they're the right age for it and that kind of thing. Moving on to stage 4, Netherlands, 2000. You see a baby boom in stage 4 because birth rates are on the decline, and normally right before they start to really just peter out and you're not having anything, you see just a massive thing. You see this in America around the Second World War. Everyone just had a kid, and that's what they did. And that's why when you look at America, you'll see the normal population is to see a big old bump right there. In the Netherlands, you can see that once you get to stage 4, this looks like a triangle, bump, and then it starts to rescind. And this is what's going to lead you into stage 5. Oh, wait, we got someone here. Oh, this is unexpected. Hello, Janice. How are you doing tonight? This morning. I don't know where you are, but I'm going to assume tonight because it's getting pretty close to the night where I am. Back to the slides. So Janice, haven't said anything in chat. You might just be typing. You might be loading something. That's all right. Back to what I was saying for you and the VOD. Yeah, this bump right here, this is what's going to lead you sort of into stage 5 as you move forward. This is going to move up, and you're not going to have another baby boom unless you start changing something within society. And this is, as you start birthing less people, this is going to start to slowly peter down. And that's where the issue arises from, of having less young people than old people. There's a big old baby boom, and then they stop having kids really sudden. And that presents quite an issue. If it was just a rectangle, it'd probably be all right. But it doesn't stay rectangle, it forms an upside down triangle. Stage 5. As you can see, this is the remnants of stage 4. This would be going around, and then there would be the bump. But now this bump has had time where all of these people have gotten old and died for the most part. And now you have this big old bump. This hasn't happened yet. This is projected, so this might not happen. But you have the remnants of this big baby boom, and then they stopped having kids after that to nearly the extent of what was before. So now all of these people are going to get old and they're going to die. And these people are going to have to carry the weight of everyone above them because there's this precedent of not having kids and it keeps going down. And obviously these people who are just massively outnumbered, who's below them, this is such a big bump, are going to slide up until none of them are working. As you can see here, this is really the line where they stop working and all of these people have to support them. And once this moves over, you're kind of beamed. You're in a real sticky situation because there's so little people to support so many. And that's what you see in stage 5. And a lot of population policies are to prevent this. A lot of them are to stop you from having a massive growth, which we see before, to stop. Well, let me rephrase this. Population policies are to prevent this or to prevent this. Either you're trying to stop just massive amounts of children being born that are really like taking up space, and you know you're not going to have enough to support them all as adults. You're going to have a housing crisis. You're going to have to build massive cities that you don't have the budget for. Or they're to stop the population getting older. You want population average age to stay the same. You want enough kids to be there to balance out the older people, the elderly. You want to have a favorable dependency ratio. What a dependency ratio is, you'll hear that thrown around a lot. It's the amount of people who are younger than 18 or older than 65 compared to everyone else. It's the amount of people that can't do work for the economy and support others compared to the people who can. And you want there to be more people who are contributing, or at least enough of them to support everyone else, than everyone who is just eating up money, who isn't contributing to the economy anymore, or hasn't done so yet. And so the first of these policies we're going to look at, this one is to prevent a stage 5 situation in a country that's slipping into it. It's a pro-natal policy. We have someone here now, so I might have to roll back before I go to this. Janice, since you're just here, if you need me to explain anything yet, if you need me to go back on something that you caught me in the middle of, because the only thing I've really gone through so far was those population pyramids, I can gladly roll back and look over those again. You're not real in the chat. I don't know if it's an issue on your part, like lag or something. It's not letting you go in. But if I don't see anything, I'm going to keep rolling. If you need something, just tell me. I can go back, talk about some population pyramids again. I'm going to give you a couple seconds. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, you're good, just curious? All right. Then I'll keep going. Pro-natal policies. We're rolling into it. Now, just generally about pro-natal policies, you'll also hear these called expansive population policies. I never heard it until I was doing my fact-checking for this and my research that I had to do to make these, just to make sure I was doing everything right. These are also called expansive population policies. It's probably easier if you don't hear the term natal thrown around a lot, because you want to expand the population, obviously. These are going to encourage people to have more children, to raise a larger family, as opposed to a situation where you're having maybe 2 people married and not having kids anymore. You want 2 people married and you need the population to start spurring up again. Have at least 3 kids, please, we're begging you. So you're going to see, once these are implemented, a higher birth rate, and consequentially a higher, and maybe finally above negative for a lot of these places, rate of natural increase. The population is going to start going up again, and people are going to start having kids again. One way that countries will go about implementing this is removing economic penalties for having children, because a lot of, as I said earlier, reasons for this is because suddenly having a family isn't what's essential to staying alive. Building a career so you can pay for everything in a developed society is what you need to stay alive. So children can be seen as a burden. Having a kid can put your career at risk, and if your career is what's keeping you afloat, then having a kid isn't as alluring. You don't want to do it if it's going to hurt you. But there is also an innate wants to do it if you aren't being put off of it. So if you remove the economic penalty for it in ways such as giving paternal, maternal leave, basically a parent can not go to work and be paid because they just had a kid and the kid needs someone there to raise it. Otherwise, it's going to have a couple issues, and you can't really be expected to wake up in the middle of the night because your baby hasn't seen anyone and it needs a diaper change because it's just been sitting in its own excrement for a day. You're going to see daycare rights, obviously, because if you're at work, you still have to go back at some point, and someone needs to watch your kid. You can't expect them to not kill themselves with a fork and an outlet all day. So if you're given daycare just for very cheap or for free, that's going to help you out. You don't have to lose time at your job. You don't have to worry about the safety of your kid. They're just hanging out with other kids, and they have someone to watch them. And also a big one that you wouldn't really think about until you read about it is first-time mothers getting midwives. What a midwife is, it's someone to help someone cope with being a mother. I guess cope, maybe not the best word. Adjust. They teach you how to raise a kid. I'm a new mom. I don't know how to breastfeed this kid, and I'm trying to breastfeed it. I don't know. And the midwife comes over and is like, oh, this is how you do it. Oh, you're doing great. This is how you keep them engaged. This is how you make sure they're learning and developing right. And just make sure the kid doesn't end up awful and the mother can do her job, or the father who was ever watching it. They can make sure they're doing a good job. They don't have to worry if they're doing something awful. They're about to commit just an atrocity with this child because they're raising it to be a psychopath. And it's taking off a lot of the stress of it because you have someone there to say, yo, you're doing great. Oh, I see a little bit of an issue here. It's not too bad. This is how I do in the future. And suddenly you feel very confident in your skills and you can do this again. You'll also see propaganda on occasion. You'll more see propaganda in eugenic and anti-natal policies, but it can happen in this. A lot of what you see is just glorification of a large family. How happy you would be if you just had 23 kids. Kids bring joy, of course, and imagine if you had more joy. Just inhuman amounts of joy. Just keep producing joy. I want kids flowing out of your door. I couldn't find any great examples of this. I think I saw one in my class, but it's just something to look out for. If you see, government-sponsored stuff or state-sponsored anything that's showcasing a family of 2 or 3, this could be because they're trying to develop the ideal of having a family of 2 or 3 children. Real-world example of this is Germany. They were one of the countries, like Germany, Italy, Japan, and then Scandinavia, maybe, I don't remember, that were slipping into stage 5. I think Spain. Stage 5, obviously, is when your population starts to shrink. This is disastrous for your economy. This is the big no. Don't do it. So when Germany realized this is going to go bad and they were just trying to take in immigrants, they thought, what if we just started getting people to have children too? We could wean ourselves off immigrants. We could make ourselves self-sufficient in this area because eventually the immigrants are going to stop coming because they're going to start developing and they're not going to see a need to come over here. And the way they did this, they put a lot of money into childcare. I think this was more, like 2 billion euros more than their defense budget, their national defense budget. It was just put into childcare because they saw this as the big national crisis. This was a threat to their defense, not really, Russia or something. They were like, kids, we need them, or else we're going to crash and burn, and we're not going to be competitive anymore. So what you see here, a lot of daycares. This was the big one. Daycares were put everywhere they could. There were still issues in like Berlin and some new neighborhoods. They just didn't have time. They were so new. So a lot of people moved in there because it's so trendy. They had issues raising children and they were asking for it. And then they just said, all right, we're going to work on that. And they kept building daycares because daycares are a lot of the hump of the challenge. You get past this very hard bit of early development and then you have a long time where there's the same challenge. I need someone to watch them. It's not going to be super challenging. I don't have to manage them every minute, but I also can't expect them to not jump out of an open window by trying to lean on the screen. So you see a lot of daycares built so they have somewhere to send their children when they get back to work. We also see before they get back to work, they cannot go to work. They're paid 1,800 euros a month. I'm not 100% on average salaries in the UK, or not UK, European Union, but a euro is stronger than a dollar by a substantial amount. And 1,800 euros is nothing to scoff at, certainly. And they get 14 months of just not going to work and being paid without the risk of getting fired for either the father or the mother, to just raise the kid, to get it past this crucial stage of development, to make sure they're not putting themselves at risk. They have income the entire time while the other parent is working. Or if they're single, this is a big one, because if you're single, you have no option before then to go to work and ruin your performance by having to get up in the middle of the night to manage the child who hasn't been managed all day, as opposed to, doing it for maybe a couple minutes. You can take turns on it because, I don't know, the child woke up, put it back to sleep. And this obviously also puts a lot less stress on the child. The child isn't going to grow up to be a psychopath because they've never had human interaction, because their parent had to go to work constantly. There was no other option for them. And I'll see, as I said before, midwives are quite important. Germany developed something called a Call a Midwife application. It's basically on your phone. Instead of having to put a lot of people into this new job of being a midwife, they could have a couple, and you ring them up, and they come over and help you with the problem, and they go help someone else. And this made it a lot more efficient, obviously, because you can have a lot more people doing the job, or a lot less people, doing the job of what would normally take a lot more people. There's 23 people who need help, teaching their child learning how to teach their child, how to make sure they're developing properly. They don't really know what's going on here. So the midwife goes to one, they teach them, everything looks great, I'll check back on you later, they go tonight, and it's very efficient. The reason, obviously, they had to do this, you see the move in stage 5 right here. This is our baby boom. Sometimes there's a little bit of a reactionary boom, but it's never enough to counteract this, at least not that we've seen so far. So we have this, and it's moving up now. This is getting towards the 60s. They're about to start retiring, and they're about to make life awful for all of these people and awful for themselves if they can't retire or they don't have the money to live properly, and now they have to live in like some German little ghetto neighborhood after working for so many years to live in a very nice house to spend their retirement in. So Germany understandably freaked out, and they're like, all right, we're going to do something about this. And you can even see just a little bit the beginnings of this, where for the first time in quite a while, this is higher than the year before it. It doesn't show up in the percentages, but you can start to see it taking effect. This was implemented very recently, I do believe. And we may be able to expect this is going to keep getting higher. Eventually, they're going to have enough to outweigh these people. Possibly next year, possibly they're going to have this issue for a couple of generations of baby boomers going into retirement. But they should be able to outweigh it. And of course, immigration going in, no, that's too old. Of course, they have immigration going into, they're trying to wean themselves off of it maybe, but they have immigration going in while they try to implement this to see if it can be successful. Next one, anti-natal policies, the polar opposite. This is where we get to start seeing our fancy little propaganda. I found a propaganda piece on this by accident, so I got to put that in. Anti-natal policy, it is as I said, the opposite of a pro-natal policy. They don't want kids. These are also called restrictive population policies. Again, I found this when I was doing my research. It was never called that to me, but apparently it's a thing. That's what I found online a lot when I looked up just population policies in general. And people are going to try to make you have very few, like one, maybe two, to no children. They want the population to stop growing because they see it as something that's going out of control and something that's going to be very detrimental when they don't have the resources to contain such a massive population. I talked about carrying capacity in my last stream. It's basically the maximum amount of individuals an area can support. They're concerned that we're going to go right past that and try and keep on going, and a lot of people are going to die before we get back down. So they want to stop that early before we get there. You can chill around there. So obviously, if people are having less children, the birth rate of the country it's impacting is going to lower, and therefore the natural increase is going to lower because death rate is going to stay the same, slowly get lower as you keep developing. And this is going to obviously slow the population growth in stage 4, stage 5, that kind of thing. It's going to real slow down there very rapidly, and it might reverse it. This is basically trying to induce stage 5, and normally it happens, and then the country realizes they just induced stage 5, and they freak out, and they try to make everyone have children again. One way that countries go about implementing an anti-natal policy is, instead of removing economic restrictions, pile them on there. Make people really not want to have kids, or at least not go past how many kids you want them to have, because it's going to really suck for them if they can't afford it. So you might give like almost no parental leave. So having this baby is going to put a lot of stress on you, your household, and the baby itself, the parents, they're going to have a terrible time of it. And they're obviously, why would you want to do that if you don't have the ability to raise the child? And you might have fines. You see this in China. You might, if they have more than 2 children, that's a fine. If you keep going, that's a fine. Sometimes you'll see forced abortions. You've already had a child. You're pregnant. No, you're not. And now the baby's dead. It's a very aggressive take on it, but it has been done before. You did see that again in China. If you look at propaganda, either this will be just a statement like of how you shouldn't have more than a certain amount of kids, you're hurting the country, that sort of thing, or it'll be a lot more subtle. It'll try to take, a route you're not expecting, so you don't freak out and say, yeah, that's propaganda. So it'll try to emphasize a lot of what we see is the closeness of a small family. If you only have one child, you can really emphasize your love on this. This is going to be a prodigy child if you get to focus on that one instead of having 17 and hoping that one of them is good and hoping that you can maintain a stable bond. You can maintain a stable bond with 1 or 2. That's what they say. So they're going to try and they're not trying to emphasize. They're going to try and persuade you. This is the way to go to be happy and have a happy household. A real-world example. This is the best example you will probably ever see of anti-natal policies. China. They saw, we have a lot of kids. We don't have space for this many kids. It's going to keep going. It's going to keep getting bigger. It's going to shoot straight through the roof. Malthusian crisis time. We don't have houses for these people. We're going to have a housing crisis. We don't have jobs for these people. There's going to be a lot of homeless. It's going to be a big strain on the economy. So why don't we just stop it? Stop all those kids from being there. And they said, 1 child. The 1-child policy was instated. If you have more than 1 kid, that's a fine. I'm not sure on the circumstances of this, but they did forced abortions if you had too many kids. You have that child? Nope. Now the child is gone. I believe they did sterilizations. You've had too many. You're done. You're cut off. It's over. It was very drastic because they saw the need to do it is very important. They thought they were going straight into Malthus. He was going to be laughing in his grave and say, look at these people. They thought I was wrong. I was so correct. Look at China. Hee. They are die. Obviously, then, or not obviously, particularly, if you're fined for breaking the limit, people are going to want to have less kids. They're going to be able to have less kids, but people have a very big emphasis on maintaining their family name. And females, of course, obtain who they marry's family name. So we saw a massive spike in female infanticide. And infanticide is taking your baby and killing it, leaving it in a dumpster, throwing it in the river, hitting it with a rock, making the baby gone, forgetting about it. It's no longer yours. You didn't break the 1-child policy. You've only had 1 kid. I don't know what happened to that other one. It was a miscarriage or something. So they would keep doing this till they get a male, and then they would be happy with themselves. Maybe if they're poor and they can't afford to keep doing having males, or maybe have a female now they have 1, they would stop there. Rich families didn't really care. Oh, you have a fine. Oh, that's so sad. Here you go. Here's your meager amount of money. I have $8 billion. I can pay this so many times. I'm going to keep having children. Back on the female infanticide, if you look at a population pyramid, I probably should have put this in, of China, you will see just a bump in male and a little staircase in the female where all of them got hit with rocks and died. And China kind of tried to say, please stop putting your daughters in the dumpster. That's not cool. And obviously it's not a problem now, is they're really trying to get rid of this because the population size stopped shooting up. Population was, and they're like, we've reached over 1 billion people. We need to stop. So they tried to make them stop, and they did stop. And they said, wait, they stopped. What do we do now? Because the population was very close to stabilizing completely. It was going very slowly and was projected to start falling, because obviously if you've less than 1 child per family, you're not replacing people as they die. You're making less people. And China realized that this was terrible for their economy, what was about to happen. And currently they're scrambling to undo what they've done because they kind of need people in their country to run it and have an economy and work and do all of that stuff that a country requires. Here's this little population map of China. This is what they saw. This was shooting up. Oh, wow. 900 million people, you say. We're going to stop that. So they stopped it, and it started curving down as they expected. And it kind of kept going, which I guess they expected. They didn't contemplate, maybe. So this is how it looks in practice. This is made quite a while ago, so this is more pronounced than what we have in Germany. Germany's the only really good example because these haven't happened until very recently. There hasn't been a need for it. Maybe it's more pronounced in Hungary because they're really digging into this one. They don't want immigration. They just want kids. But here we can see a lot more pronounced of an effect as it peters out. This is kind of unrelated, but it's urban growth. Obviously, it's going to slow down if there's less people and they're starting to go away. This is what it looks like. There's a lot of people. I don't want that. People stop. The end. Here's some propaganda. As you can see, this is just directly stating, stop having kids. Have a kid. Wait. Maybe don't have another kid. What's that? It's a girl? Please don't put it in the dumpster. If it's a girl or a boy, don't kill it. That's a pretty big point. And also, don't have kids. That's quite a big message here. 2 is enough. And have a kid, then wait. See if you want to have another kid. Hopefully die before you have another kid. Don't have another kid. This is very blunt. I think that was the point of it. Be very blunt, kind of punch someone in the face, and they say, okay, I'll only have 1 kid. I'll only do 1. And there we go. That's all we really need is propaganda. Eugenic policies. These are not very cool. This is what we define as not epic. Not a gamer moment. This isn't something gamers would do. Eugenic policies. What this does, the aim of it, the goal of it, is to increase the population of a certain subpopulation within, your main one. You've a made-up country of country. That's what it's called. It's called country. And there's 2 groups in country. One of them is yellow rolls of paper, and the other one is green rolls of paper. And the person in charge says, what if we had more green rolls of paper? And everyone in Parliament says, what a grand idea. That's the best thing I've ever heard. What if we got more green rolls of paper? This is what we gotta do. We're gonna do it. So they start really encouraging the green rolls of paper to make more green rolls of paper, and they start making the yellow rolls of paper stop existing. Wow, you want to have kids? Nope. That's the general gist of it. Normally this is racial. I guess not normally. There's not a lot of examples of it to look at least not modern. You can look at this historically and find it a lot. Colonization, obviously. You saw this with Belgium in the Congo. Normally it's racial. I would be confident enough to say that it is normally racial. And it normally has, or not normally, it just doesn't have a real impact on average birth rate or natural increase unless the population you're trying to build up is an incredibly tiny minority and you're stopping 97% of the population from reproducing. Normally, this isn't going to... I don't like using the word normally here. In the vast majority, because it's not just the gist, the normal, what you'd expect. This is almost every time. It's not going to do anything to the average birth rates or national increase. They're going to keep on as normal. And if you were just looking at that, you might not even see anything's off. You'd say the country's performing as expected. But when you look at the subpopulations that are in question, the one you're trying to boost up is going to have very inflated rates of natural increase. They're going to have a lot of births, and other ones are going to have natural decline, negative natural increase most likely. That's what you're going to be looking at, and probably very, very low birth rates, not nearly enough to replace those who are dying because they're not allowed to. And normally you'd go about this because you're not going to be subtle with this. If you're doing this, you're probably being quite aggressive. You can see forced abortions, forced sterilization, and genocide on occasion. We'll see that in a real-world example. I'm sure you've read it because it's half of the page. Genocide is possible. I wouldn't say it's usual, perhaps, but it can happen. Again, colonization and our real-world example, Nazi Germany. They kind of did a bit of the second one. Just a small amount. Nazi Germany, what they did, the real-world example of eugenics. They basically, every minority was targeted. If you weren't Aryan, they weren't actually Aryan. They just kind of took the term and ran with it. It was a horrible misidentification. I'm looking for the word. Misdefinition. It was the wrong word because Aryan is something completely different. It's not the race they were at all. But if you weren't really, really German, then you were targeted. Maybe not to the extent that others were targeted, but you were targeted. In the non-racial side of it, people who were born mentally or physically disabled were usually sterilized without consent. They were taken to the hospital and they were kind of kept there, maybe executed, almost certainly. No more children for you. That was the case with them. If you looked at someone like Jews, well, they made these wacky little things called concentration camps, and they put people they didn't like in there and then, shot them, gassed them, hit them with whips until they died, that sort of thing. And they put a lot of policies into having their Aryans, their Germans, have a lot of children. They were going to beat the Russians and then just turn the Urals into a massive wall of kids. They wanted mothers to have like 6 children. I think that was the number they went with. So Germans saw a big spike in their birth, and everyone else saw, the end of a gun, that sort of thing. That's sort of the most hardcore approach to what we've seen, other than maybe the colonization of America by the Spanish. That's sort of something you could look at. Looking at the receiving side of getting removed, getting told you aren't supposed to be in the country anymore. This is the global Jewish population. In 1939 is when Germany declared war on Poland and really started their whole little, I'm going to put you in the shower and turn on the chlorine gas, the Zyklon B sort of thing. So you see them doing just fine, and then their rate of natural increase is really negative. This isn't going up, in case you haven't noticed. It's going down by quite a bit. So the Germans start killing people, and they start saying you're not having kids because you're Jewish, and you're not allowed to own a shop, and you're probably not allowed to get a job if you're not Jewish enough to get shot. And they go down, and German population went down because they were getting shot by Russians and British people, but birth rates were going quite up because now they were past this massive depression of the 20s, and they were in quite a strong economy, and a guy that said, have a lot of kids, do it. Looking at America did this thing in the early 1900s. It pretty much completely stopped once we entered the Second World War because they were like, hey, they're doing that, and we don't like them, so we can't do that either, right? We're going to stop. What we were a lot of what we claimed to be looking to do was breed out, what is the word? Genetic birth defects. Birth defects, that's what I'm looking for. If you had any sort of defect, you probably weren't allowed or weren't encouraged to have kids, but it trailed into race a lot. It was definitely a way to uphold the upper class because there was a big class divide along it. We saw a lot of blacks protesting against this because they were particularly targeted. We saw this go into our immigration policies. We had to see if you were allowed to come in, if you fit with our eugenic policies before you could come into the United States. That sort of thing. That's what you're looking at here. This is not nearly as aggressive as what the Nazis did. We didn't walk around. I think that guy has Alzheimer's. Shoot him. That wouldn't really be the case anyways, because that's not something you can pass on. But still, you get the gist of it. This was a more subtle, it was well known, and we did it openly, but we didn't make it a big punch in the face. You are dead now. Practice questions. Oh boy, I love me some practice questions. Now it's time for the Epic Gamer. These are just 3. I'll give the VOD some time to pause. If Janice, if you're gonna answer any questions, just tell me right now. I'll give you time to answer too. But if not, I'll give the VOD their pause time, and then I'll just go with the answer. I'll give that, what time is it? I don't know what the delay is. I'm going to say 15 seconds. So we're going to sit here for about 15 seconds, which we've spent 5 of now, seeing if there's an answer, because we got 4 seconds left. All right, that was our 15 seconds. That was really productive. On my part, I'm a very good streamer. I'm very great at my job. Thank you, Fiveable, for hiring. So moving on to the VOD, you boys. With the questions. Our first question we're looking at is, what population policy do very developed countries tend to adopt? Do they tend to use? This is a time you would use to pause the video and think through your answer. This one shouldn't be too bad. This is where you would unpause your video, which I assume you've done, because you can hear me saying unpause your video. If you said a pro-natal policy, or yes, a pro-natal policy, an expansion policy, you would be absolutely correct. As you develop, your birth rate basically inevitably declines until you try to do something like this, and they're trying to reverse that. It really is that simple. You love to see it. Second one, what are used as an alternative or supplement to pro-natal policies, the policies we've just spoken of that advanced countries like to use? This is where you would pause the video to answer the question. You've done it. You've unpaused the video with your incredible answer. How amazing. If you said something along the lines of immigration, I would absolutely agree with you. There are definitely multiple ways to attack this answer to really get in there and beat it up. I can't say I know 100% of them. The big one that you actually see put into practice is immigration. Look at Europe. They're not having people anymore. There's no one being born. Germany relies on a lot of intercontinental immigration to it because it has such a strong economy. When you look at everywhere else, they can get a lot from the Middle East, which has caused some controversy, but it has done what they wanted it to do. It has combated the very slow population growth. Immigration is very popular. It's a lot of times more popular than pro-natal policies. The only country that really said, we're not doing the whole immigration thing, we're doing pro-natal policies to the extent of my knowledge, is Hungary and maybe Poland. I'm not 100% on that one. I know they were kind of anti-immigration. But yeah, immigration is the big one. If you had one that's like, it just works and you know it just works, it probably just works. There's a lot of ways to attack this, but that's the one you see put in practice. That's all of our things then. Just a quick recap in case you see something and you say, I don't remember that, and you want to rewind the stream. Then you would look here. We obviously had our pre-stream knowledge. I hope you got those right because that'd be good for you. But there's no real point to rewind there. Population growth. Actually, no. Let me take a step back. If you skipped any of the questions at the beginning, there's a point to rewind, and you might want to do it. Questions are just good. Practice is just good. Population growth. Went over that. If you don't understand any of the triangles, that little demographic transition model thing, just pump back in there. If you still don't understand it, that's my bad. You should come to the stream live next time. Just tell me if you're not understanding something. It'd be real good for me. It'd be real good for you. There's a lot of online ways to look at it. I'm really sorry if you aren't understanding anything there. Look at pro-natal policies. We look at anti-natal policies. We looked at eugenics. We just did those epic gamer practice questions. Those were pretty cool. We would have a Q&A if anyone was still watching. as a way to wrap up, I just like to reiterate, follow Fiveable. They've got social media. Fiveable is social media. Yeah, they do. Fiveable is social media. Fiveable social media is Think Fiveable. They got a Twitter. They've got an Instagram. They've got a YouTube. It's Think Fiveable on all of them. It's not even hard. It's not even complicated. Hey, what's Fiveable social media? It's Think Fiveable. What about Instagram? If that's Twitter, they're all Think Fiveable. That's crazy. It's really easy to just get it going. You know one, you know all of them. Hey, I've got Fiveable on Twitter, but I want to follow them on Instagram. What's your name on there? Oh, it's the same. Whoa. And this really is that easy. You love to see it. This is going to be my outro screen because there is no Q&A. The Q&A is gone. I have nothing after this. That's correct. Let me do this. Can I stop sharing screen? Oh. That's not what I want. That's what I want. What a great outro screen. It's me. I'm really tired. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I'm going to stop streaming now. I hope you enjoyed the VOD, actually. You're all on the VOD. How's it going? I really hope you learned a lot on our journey through the cosmos. Have a great morning, evening, night, afternoon.